Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the March 24th meeting of the Revere City Council Zoning Subcommittee. My name is Stephen Reardon. I'm the chairman. This evening we have committee members Guanasso, Councilor Novoselsky. Councilor Patch is away on vacation, and I'm very happy to welcome back Councilor Penta, who has been on a brief convalescence. Very glad to see him here in the chambers. Along with Councilor Zambuto, Councilor Powers, Councilor Morabito, Councilor Hass, and Councilor Giannino, not on the committee but sitting here with us this evening. We have three matters before the subcommittee. First is application PUD-14-01. This is a continuation of a hearing on 29 Thayer Avenue Development LLC, 35 Grove Street, Boston, Massachusetts, requesting permission from the City Council to construct a planned unit development comprising of 42 residential condominium units within the LI, that's the Light Industrial District, at 29 Thayer Avenue, Revere, Mass. Where we left off at the last time, as you may recall, is that the developer was planning on presenting a traffic study and having a traffic expert available to the subcommittee, and I've been told that that is what's going to happen tonight. As to commentary, we certainly will entertain commentary. I would ask, though, that to the extent that you have already expressed your opinion on it and have nothing new to offer, that you make it extremely brief, and to the extent that, and hopefully you won't feel compelled to repeat what's been said. I know the subcommittee has been listening very, very intently to the various opinions of the residents and others on this project. However, if you do have anything new that you would like to add, we certainly do not want to stifle comment by any way, shape, or form. So I'll ask Attorney Cipolletta to come to the podium and make a presentation regarding the traffic study. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, honorable members. James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway in Revere, on behalf of the applicant. When we left off a couple of weeks ago, we were sent back to refine and expand upon some of our issues that arose during not only the public hearing but also the subcommittee meeting. In that regard and along that way, we have gotten together again with our civil engineer, Rick Salvo from Engineering Alliance, and also Ms. Connolly from Connolly Associates, who did the traffic study both in 2006 and in 2014. She would be able to very intelligently, more so than I, address the traffic study that's been submitted to the council and to the subcommittee. But I would point up that the number of units that we had been reduced to back in 2006, after having gone through a number of meetings and hearings at the Site Plan Review Committee, was 47. When we returned to Site Plan Review in 2013, Frank Stringy and the Site Plan Review Committee further recommended a reduction down to 42. It's that 42 that is reflected in the 2014 traffic study that Ms. Connolly will address. Mr. Salvo will also address, and he's prepared to talk about the matters of flooding and storm flowage and those issues that were raised both at the public hearing and the site and at the subcommittee. Further along, we do have some other follow-up as to competing uses that might be able to occupy that site, and we'll get to those at the proper time. One of the councilors, and it escapes my memory now, it may have been more than one at the subcommittee, asked us about parking, and we do have a new parking plan, an updated parking plan that Rick Salvo will present to the subcommittee this evening, and also to the clerk for distribution to the council as a whole. I will tell you in thumbnail fashion that it contains a total of 109 legal parking spaces. That's quite more than enough and adequate for handling a project of this size and still keeping the marina operating as a reasonably well-doing marina. Lastly, the points that I had picked up from the last subcommittee meeting had to do with what's the difference in tax revenue. Well, when the gentleman bought the land a few years ago, and indeed when we were before the Site Plan Review Committee in 2006, tax bill was about $9,000. It's just shy of $13,000 now. We anticipate that the taxes that will be generated will be in excess of $250,000. That's not only the taxes that would be paid by way of real estate tax to the 42 units, but also the auto and boat excise taxes. So we anticipate, and it's been calculated out, to be in excess just on the real estate taxes alone, to be more than $200,000. So you're looking at quite a substantial increase in tax revenue and revenue stream to the City of Revere. One further that I noted during the the subcommittee was with regard to the height of the building. You may recall, Mr. Chairman, that Site Plan Review had asked us to reduce the project. We reduced it by a total of 1.5 floors from the initial presentation in 2006. The total height of the building is 42 feet. It's only 42% of what's allowed in a PUD in the light industrial district. So whereas the zoning ordinance allows the PUD height to be a maximum of 100 feet, this is very conservative in height, and I know that that was one of the concerns that was voiced not only by some of the people who were residing in the neighborhood, but also some of the councilors on the subcommittee. Mr. Chairman, I would then ask the permission of the chair for purposes of presentation for Rick Salvo to give a dissertation both on the parking and the potential seawall construction, with your permission.
Please do. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I've got some revised drawings here that I'd like to hand out if I could.
Sure. Give it to the clerk. The clerk will handle it.
So the parking plan that you now have in front of you is fairly similar to the one that was presented at the original council meeting and the last subcommittee meeting. The addition that's been added to this is the marina parking, which I know was questioned quite a bit during the last presentation. Obviously, in the PUD zone, there's a fairly strict requirement of 2 parking spaces per unit. 42 units yields a total need of 84 parking spaces. As you know from other sections of the city ordinance, there are different requirements for one bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units that range 1.5 spaces per unit, 1.75 spaces per unit to 2 spaces per unit. So even though those aren't really listed in the PUD section, if you apply that same criteria, there's likely an excess in parking, especially for those 1-bedroom units generally aren't going to yield the 2 spaces. Nonetheless, the zoning does require 2 spaces per unit, which is 84 spaces. In our opinion, that's probably high if you apply those other sections of the zoning ordinance, but that's what the zoning requires, so that's what we've provided. In addition, at the top of the screen, or the top of the plan, you'll notice sort of a gravel parking area with a green landscaped sort of open space in front of that up against the Pine River. That's intended to be sort of a gravel parking area. It's not intended to be striped, so that if there's more trailers that need to be parked than cars need to be parked, or vice versa, there'd be a little bit of flexibility there. But there's essentially parking for 25 vehicles and as much as 6 boat trailers in that particular area. Relative to the site grading that we talked about during the last portion of the hearing, the proposal is to raise this site to elevation 10 just above the floodplain elevation. In doing that, after several discussions with the owner, we're willing to go to the Conservation Commission and talk about the potential to install a seawall along the northerly corner of the property line in this area here, which would be about a 3-foot-high seawall, raise that grade from elevation 7 to about elevation 10 in an effort to stop the flooding that's coming from the northerly direction across the ball field, across the site, and heading in this way. We discussed at length at the first hearing the floodplain elevation for a coastal floodplain has almost an infinite supply of water associated with it. It comes from the Atlantic Ocean. So coastal floodplains function very differently than inland floodplains in that if that particular floodplain in a storm surge event is going to flood to elevation 12, it's going to flood to elevation 12, whether there's a small impediment stopping it from flooding or not stopping it from flooding, only because there's that infinite fetch of water that's associated with that particular floodplain. But we feel by adding in the seawall over in this location and raising up that northern corner of the property, we can try to alleviate flooding to the extent that we can that's coming from that northerly direction. Those are essentially the changes that were made to the site plan. I think at this point it probably makes sense to turn it over to Jen Conley to talk about the traffic, as I think that was sort of the big crux of the last meeting.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Conley, and my firm Conley Associates conducted the traffic impact study for this project back in 2006, and it has also provided you with an update conducted this year in 2014. In 2006, we completed a complete traffic study for the project. At that time, they were contemplating 47 units, a little larger than the current proposal. And we collected traffic data during the peak periods, during the AM kind of rush hour period and during the PM rush hour period, which is standard in a traffic study of this type. We took a look at those two entrance points to the neighborhood, which would be at Route 1A at North Shore Road, at Mills Avenue at that signal at the jug handle, and as well as at that unsignalized intersection at John Ave and Hayes Avenue. We adjusted the data seasonally to represent a peak month. As we know, there's obviously seasonal variations. And we projected that data to a future year. We tend to look 5 years ahead when we're conducting a traffic study, just to account for anything that might happen traffic-wise before the project's completely built out and fully operational. At that time, as we all can remember, in 2006, a lot of growth was happening and a lot of growth was anticipated. In fact, we included growth for approximately 400 residential units in the city that were anticipated at that time, and assigned the traffic to the likely routes that they would be traveling at that time. As we know, through economic reasons, perhaps not as many residential units have been constructed, and as a result, also, traffic has actually decreased in most areas in Massachusetts, and I will get to when we did our update. We found this area was no different. However, to continue with the discussion of the 2006 study, we then estimated the traffic associated with that project, and that was, again, 47 units. And with 47 units during the highest hour of the morning and in the afternoon commuting period, you can approximately estimate 30 vehicle trips will visit to and from the site total. 28 in the morning peak hour, 33 in the afternoon peak hour. That's ins and outs. That's a total number of trips. In the morning, 5 people would enter, 23 would exit, presumably going to work. In the afternoon, the pattern is reversed, obviously. We took a look as well then at how the intersections were operating, and took a look at the delay based on the traffic signal timing at that Mills Avenue signal, and also the amount of delay that's encountered by people waiting to take a turn out from that stop sign at the unsignalized intersection. Both locations are operating at acceptable levels of service with a delay in the range of 25 to 35 seconds at that time. The increase anticipated with the project, and again, the project impact is about 30 vehicles during that highest hour. That's 1 every 2 minutes. So if you were to sit here and wait for 2 minutes and then assume a car drove by and then wait another 2 minutes and a car went by, that level of traffic increase is probably not perceivable to the average person entering that intersection. But we did see that the increases in delay at those intersections would be about a second per vehicle at that time. The big question when the project was resurrected recently is, so what has happened since then? Is this study still valid? And so we conducted a traffic count again right at that signalized intersection at Mills Avenue and the Jug Handle, and we actually found that traffic has decreased since that time. And again, what probably happened, it probably encountered a sharp decrease, and now is probably back on the upswing, increasing. However, it hasn't reached the 2006 levels as of yet. Interestingly enough, we counted it during the same week, the first week in March, so our data is pretty consistent because, again, as we discussed, seasonal variations can be pretty significant. So counting at different months, we would have had to account for that when we looked at our growth over those years. We also then took a look at just what the modification would be, reducing the number of units from 47 down to 42. And as could be anticipated, because it's about a 10% decrease, the number of trips will be decreased by about 10% as well. So you're talking about a reduction of about 3 peak hour trips over what was originally assumed in that study. So the previous study presents kind of a conservative look. If we were to assume that 2006 was now 2014, the study shows what would happen should the economy really rebound. And a lot of these projects that are talked about were to happen. If we were to end up with extra traffic, if, you know, any variety of whether it's residential development or other types of development that I know we're all aware have been contemplated, any of those types of developments, the 2006 study assumed a very large percentage of growth and presents a very highly conservative condition given the fact that we are 5 to 10% below the 2006 data that we collected at that time. So the conclusions in that study are still valid, if not highly conservative. And I would be happy to answer any specific questions that you might have about that traffic.
While we have the opportunity, I guess, and I would welcome Councilor Arrigo to the chamber as well, perhaps the subcommittee first and then the city councils have some traffic questions. If so, this would be a good time to ask. If not, we can always bring our traffic expert back and continue with the presentation from the developer. Any questions? Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got 21 pages of information regarding this particular proposal in terms of the parking and traffic impact.
Certainly.
You said 20% was the reduction in the 2 years from 2006 to current?
I believe it was
and you said 20%, there was 47 units initially, and now there's 42?
Correct, about 10% of
10%.
a decrease, yes.
Okay. And this basis is, how scientific is this basis? I mean, this is based on
This is based
what?
on hundreds of data points at other residential developments, similar to this one that range, but that do range in the size. There is a significant range in size. So it's from anything from a small development of 5 or 10 units up to 1,000 units. And what they do is that it's the Institute of Transportation Engineers collects this information. They basically count how many people come and go from existing developments, and especially for residential land uses, the number of data points is in the hundreds, if not the thousands. So it becomes a pretty reliable estimate for what the trip generation patterns would be. And what I try to tell people, especially with the residential use, is to think about their own family. I leave the house during typical commuting times. My husband leaves a little bit later than me, so we don't necessarily leave during the same hour. So during the peak hour, I leave, but he doesn't leave. Then you also have other people who make different trips, whether it's a mother picking up her child, would pick up her child outside of, again, that highest hour, whereas her husband might commute home during that highest hour. And the trip rates, basically, that is the highest hour. I'm in no way saying that there aren't other trips coming or going from these developments, but that's when it's going to be the most intensive impact.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Penta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're on the parking, I'll speak on some other things after this and get this out of the way. I'm glad you came up. I watched this meeting several times on TV. Unfortunately, I couldn't be here, but listening to 84 units, 42 units and 84 spaces, which was proposed. Right away, I believe people must have thought there's 2 per unit. There's 12 one-bedrooms going here, which are zoning, at least that I recall, is 1 per unit. 2-bedroom, you have 30, which is a parking space and a half, which would go to 45, which gives us 57, and 20, that leaves us 25 spaces that are available on the site. Now you just increased it another 27. There's just as many spaces extra than is needed for the project. In other words, what do you have to apply? So, I mean, I just want to make sure all the facts are on the table tonight. You know, not emotions and not everything else, and what the best thing for this area is. And just seeing that even though you have a 2-bedroom, does not mean somebody's going to have 2 cars either, or 1.5 cars. They could have 1. So that's the rule of thumb at worst scenario. And then also with the boatyard being there, I look at this as even a decrease. You have 29 slips that I know they could deed them or lease them to someone in the condo, which would bring a less person to the boat slips. So in reality, you know, the biggest fear I heard was traffic, and I thought about this long and hard, that it's probably going to be minimized. I look at this thing, you had 100 boats in there right now. Close to 100 boats there. 100 people going back and forth, taking care of the boats, whatever. Even more people. But I'm saying is, I look at this as a decrease. They're actually decreasing the property from light industrial down to residential. So, I mean, sometimes you got to watch what you wish for, but I do see the traffic being minimized here. At least what I heard at the meeting and stuff like that, with a boatyard and 42 units proposed. But I thank you for your expertise, because you basically even added more spaces to the area for either guests or whatever it may be. And I also heard, well, I'll bring that up later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. If there aren't any questions immediately regarding the parking, I'll ask Attorney Cipolletta to continue with his presentation if he has any more, or if he has anything else to add.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Rigo.
do non-committee members now have a chance to ask questions, traffic questions, or?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I know you mentioned kind of vaguely that the projections include other development. Does that include potential for a casino? Have we looked at what our casino traffic, because we've done extensive casino traffic impact studies, and I just wonder if that this new updated projection includes anything that was done as part of the casino.
No, it does not draw any conclusions about what will be developed and what the traffic impact of the casino will be. However, again, at that time, we were assuming 430 residential units in a traffic growth rate of 2% per year, none of which has been realized. So that's a significant amount of traffic that is associated with other developments. So although it isn't specifically calculated to be what a casino would generate, it does include a significant amount of background development, because again, the study was conducted in 2006 when we weren't as far along with what would be happening casino-wise.
And I'd say on top of the casino, we have 900 units potentially coming online on Ocean Ave, so I wonder what that impact would also make. The other question I have is about the marina, or the use of the marina. Was any of that addressed in the, I didn't see any of that in the study of potential use of the marina outside of the residents who may live there?
Yeah, the analysis that I conducted really concentrated on the peak commuting hours, and my experiences with the marina, their impact isn't as heavily felt during those peak commuting hours. They follow a different trip pattern. So yes, over the course of the day, that would have some traffic impact, but again, during those most intense traffic hours, it would have less of an impact. So it's not specifically analyzed.
Okay, and then finally, was there any work done with our own engineer? Did Nick Rystrom take a look at this report at all, or? just
Back
wonder.
in 2006, we did get a lot of comment back from the city engineer and some recommendations that are illustrated on the site plan as far as traffic calming methods for the community. So those are still being carried on the
Okay.
site plan and proposed as mitigation at this
So
time.
for the original, but not the updated, the
Correct.
2006 numbers, but
And
not
again,
the
because the
updated?
update, the traffic impact is lower and traffic isn't at that,
Okay.
those recommendations would still be, again, conservative recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Lugo. Councilor Powers has a traffic question, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about 84 spaces for the 42 proposed condominiums, and you're talking about an additional 27 spaces for marina customers. Is that
I
correct?
believe it's 25.
Is it 25? I'm sorry, I stand corrected. So, we're talking about not 42 units any longer. We're talking about an additional 25 areas of activity down there in that neighborhood. Am I correct?
I would call one area of activity, yes, in the marina.
Well, when I say an additional, I'm saying the potential for an additional 27 cars down there, trailers, whatever you want to call them. Okay, I didn't get your address when you first spoke. Did you live in this area?
I do not. I live in the city of Boston.
Well, okay. Well, I happen to frequent North Shore Road on a daily basis from probably 7:30 in the morning till 8:30. And anyone that does that also would have to agree that there's probably, by the time you get to Revere Street from the Point of Pines, there's probably 20 minutes to a half an hour wait in traffic. So this project, traffic-wise, just doesn't affect Mills Avenue, Riverside. It affects Oak Island and Lower Revere Street, and parts of Revere Street also. We keep talking about, this casino proposal, mitigating traffic. This, to me, in no ways mitigates traffic. It only adds to the traffic in our city. Now, with that
Councilor,
said,
if you could just address the question to
I
this
will.
lady, you have an
I'm
opportunity
all
to comment
done.
later.
I'm all done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. Once again, Attorney Cipolletta, if you have any of the other developers, speakers, we'd be glad to hear them at this point.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That would conclude the expert witness segment of our presentation as requested by the City Council. I did want to note two other things, is that in a situation like this, you always have to look at what's there. And what's there? Well, you saw it. You've got a rundown boathouse. You have boats parked all over the parking area, all over the wetlands. Some of them are operational, some of them aren't, and the place is not the highest and best use and not the best effect for the zoning district, the neighborhood around it, or the city of Revere. It's not an insult to my client to say that it's an eyesore because he bought it, but he bought it because he wanted to improve it. So that's what you see when you look at what's there now. What could go there? Well, it's light industrial. There is a plethora of industrial uses that can go there. And they're toxic, they're offensive, but they're allowed. And when you look at what can go there as opposed to the least offensive, a residential development on a small scale, about 42% of what you can actually do under our zoning code, I think this is the best proposal that the city has to look at. The other thing that I think is really interesting too, because I've got some calls. I got some calls because this was in the newspaper, was on the internet, and people indeed watched it at home. And they said, well, what if this project doesn't go? What's your guy going to do? Well, he has some options. He can keep it, he can sell it. And who's he going to sell it to once the development community out there knows that the city of Revere is not receptive to granting a special permit for a planned unit development that includes a small number, a modest number of 42 residential units? What are you going to get? You're going to get people who are exempt from zoning. And who are those people? Those people are the developers who develop 40B. And you know what? You're not going to have any control over low-income housing. And those are going to be the developers who want to put sober homes and rehab facilities. And you know what? You don't have any control over them because they trump local zoning. So that's what you're looking at down the road as a comparison to what this project is. So when you look at what's there, it's not good. When you look at what could be, that's not good either. When you look at this proposal, Mr. Chairman, that's good.
Thank you, Attorney Cipollotto. Your point is certainly well taken. At this point, I will, again, as I suggested at the outset, entertain any new commentary. Particularly, I'd be interested to hear a reaction to the traffic report, as we did not discuss that at the last meeting. But other than commentary on the traffic study, I just as soon avoid rehashing many of the other complaints, as I suggested. Certainly the subcommittee members, if not the entire city council who was here at the last meeting, with the exception of Council Penta, who was out, your voices were certainly heard. So I would invite anybody who would like to speak at this point, particularly about the traffic issue, please raise your hand and I'll call you to the podium. Please come up. State your name and your address too, please. Everybody who speaks, please state your name and your address.
My name is Loretta LaCentra. I live at 30 John Ave in the Riverside. Ms. Conley, I have a copy of, it looks like your 2006 traffic report, and it says that the proposed residential development is expected to generate 338 vehicle trips over the course of a weekday. Is that correct?
Certainly.
That is correct. So 338 more cars will go in and out of the neighborhood on a daily basis. I have copies of that if the councilors would like to see that.
That is not correct. That is the number.
Please come to the podium, please.
That's the number of daily trips. So those are the trips in and the trips out.
So back and forth.
So half of that.
Half of that.
Is the number of vehicles that would visit the site.
I see. Thank you.
So almost 170 if we round.
I think that's probably, given that this is an estimate, I suppose we can round it off.
But that's vehicle trips, so it will in fact be cars in and out, 338. Could I kindly leave these with you in case the councilors want to see the report?
I think most of us actually have looked at the report. We all have the report at this point. Thank you for your pointing that out to us. Would anybody else like to discuss the traffic issue? Councilor Correggio, former Councilor Correggio.
Thank you very much. Some of the residents asked me to come up here. The issue on the traffic problem, a lot of these units, a lot of families have 2 cars, maybe 3. A lot of that hasn't been mentioned. You might have holidays and other days that might draw in more cars. And North Shore Road is actually an outdated highway. It's a 2-lane highway, and it's in the summertime. It's a hectic situation. It's huge traffic problems, and also public safety. Myself being a retired fire lieutenant, the Pines Fire Station is closed. If you need an apparatus to get there, whether it's a medical aid or any other issue, there's going to be issues. So I support the neighborhood. They really don't want it, and I really think it's too big for the area. And that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you, former Councilor Correggio. Please come to the podium, sir.
Thank you. Good evening. Mark DeSimone. I live at 273 North Shore Road, corner of Gilbert Ave. I've lived there for 20 years. Own my home there. I've done my homework. I've met with the developer. I know him. He's a proven developer. As far as the traffic, people are going to throw at us every single thing that they can to say that it's going to be bad. Traffic, crime, whatever. The traffic down there now with the boatyard we have is probably more traffic than you would have with a development there. And as far as people traversing in and out of the neighborhood, I'd rather have it be people that live there, that have a stake in the neighborhood, than people that are strangers, that are coming to a storage facility, or God forbid, a methadone clinic or something of that nature that they, as we all know, could put there. The developer is not going to go away and take a loss on his property. He's going to do something with it. And let's do something with someone who has a proven track record and is willing to spend some money in the community and make it better. I want something that's going to make my house worth more money. And a lot of the literature that I've got from the opponents on this is, it's not true. They're talking about rentals, and as you know, the application is not for a rental unit, it's for residential properties, condominiums. If we can put 40 units down there that are going to sell at a high price, it's the best thing that could happen for me, for my value of my home. If I could put people that with a nice marina that are coming and going to work a couple of times a day, that's the people that I want driving through there, not people that are going to, put something in a self-storage bin, or trucks that may be going, it's still industrial zoned. I don't want trash trucks or dumpsters or anything like that down there. And we have a chance to work with someone who's willing to spend some money and do something in a place that's an eyesore now. If people could look through all of the propaganda that's been put out there. Most of the people are concerned about parking. I've heard that, and that relates to the traffic. As it sits now on the books in Revere, there is no parking on any of the streets on either side. Everybody parks there, but it's not enforced. But the way the law reads in the city, there's no parking on either side of any street in that neighborhood, Mills Ave, or any of the side streets, the 12 side streets that are there. So as far as people parking on the, that live there, coming to park on the streets, I'm pretty sure that could be taken care of by following the law. But as far as people worrying about traffic coming in and out, another 40 cars, to me, it's a ridiculous thought. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else like to speak? All right, at this point, I'm sorry, come forward. Again, state your name and your address.
Ron Weinberg, 71 Mills Ave. I'm just a little confused here tonight because while I have not attended a lot of these types of meetings, we're talking about traffic. But yet I'm hearing an awful lot of other items involved in this project. We're hearing a study that was paid for by the developers. And we're hearing that these are acceptable amounts of traffic. What I like to know is what's unacceptable. And what confuses me is that we're sitting here talking about this project that is going to impact this area like no other project could do. Not whether it's going to be light industrial, because that's its own issue. Any other project that comes up is its own issue. We're talking about condominiums that's going to impact our area with a myriad of problems. What's not acceptable for traffic, if that's what we're going to talk about? Can somebody tell me?
Well, we're not here to discuss what is or what is not acceptable. What we're here to do is learn what the traffic will be. Ultimately, the decision makers, who essentially are the city council, have to determine whether or not what has been proposed is acceptable or not acceptable. Whether or not, if you have any quarrel with their figures, and you have other figures or other empirical information that suggests that they're wrong, that would be one thing. Other than that, we kind of accept the fact that we have a traffic study versus nothing else. And so the traffic study speaks for itself, I would say. Now, as to the issue of we'll take this project by project, I think what Attorney Cipolletta wanted to make sure everybody understood, and I want to make sure everybody understands, is this. There are certain uses to that property that will not come before this city council or any other board in this city for permissive use. And some of those things may be more onerous than what is there, and all the city council will be able to do is watch it go up or not. And that, I think, is the point that Councilor Cipolletta wanted to make, and some of the speakers have wanted to make at this juncture. It is zone light industrial, and I urged everybody who was here considering this, keeping an open mind, at the last meeting to take a look at the uses for light industrial. And what you see there is pretty much what can go there. And it's important that you understand that, and then, you make your own decision, as will the city council.
Well, I thank you for that clarification. I did not understand that. But the last question I have is, why can't this area, it's already been changed once, why can't it be changed again? Why can't it be zoned for single-family homes?
Well, that is an entirely different question. But as of right now, if anybody were to come forward with this project, we would not be in a position to say we don't like your project, so we're changing the zoning, because we'd be in a very difficult legal situation if we tried to do that.
I understand that.
Okay.
Hopefully we can think about that if this project doesn't go forward.
Thank you for your comments. Please come forward.
My name is Philip Waldy. I live at 33 Nahant Ave in Winthrop, Mass. I used to keep my boat here, and I'm very familiar with the property. When I heard there may be some condos being built, my wife and I are empty nesters, and we currently keep our boat in Winthrop, but it's a pain in the neck. And I was going to get up and talk later, but traffic-wise, we want to keep our boat there, and we want to live there. And in all frankness, I mean, I'd really look forward to the opportunity to live at that community. So.
Thank you. I'm glad you spoke, because there probably will not be a later before this subcommittee. If anybody else has anything else to say, either of you. Again, state your name and your address.
Good evening. Ricky LaCentra, 30 John Avenue in Revere. I just wanted to present, at the last meeting, I presented a petition with 125 signatures. I've got 24 more signatures from residents in the Riverside, which would represent 79% of the Riverside is against the homes, or against this special permit. I did briefly look at the traffic study, which I got maybe about 15 minutes before this, and I just kind of baffled that they did the traffic study in one day and took 2 hours in one day. But the thought of 338 trips in the cars going to one location down the end of the Riverside, the Thayer Ave, is bothersome. It's something we don't need. One other thing that was never brought up, and if you don't mind if I could just bring it up, I've been a licensed real estate broker for over 30 years, and I did a little run of some numbers for a 4-year period from February 1st, 2010 to January 28th, 2014. 19 homes in the Riverside were sold. 19. The average price of those houses that were sold is $205,568.42. And the average square footage of those homes is 1,416 square feet. I don't know how the developer is dreaming of selling smaller units than that, the average square footage, for $100,000 more than the average home has sold in 4 years in that area. I've got a spreadsheet here I could just present to the council. With those figures, I just think it's a pipe dream, and my biggest fear is if this is allowed and you can't sell them for $300,000 apiece, what then? Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else like to speak? All right, well, at this point, I'm going to open it up to the, please come forward.
My name's Charles Klein. I live in Winthrop, and I recently heard about this project, and it interested me because I'm a single guy. I run a lobster business, a commercial business, and have to tie up my boat somewhere. And I heard there were going to be units that, were single bedroom and a slip to be able to be leased out to keep my boat in. And, how nice would that be for me to be able to buy a unit, keep my boat there, and walk out my front door and go to work each day. And, you were talking about traffic and whatnot. I'd be one of those people that didn't have to drive off the property, would just walk to work, and, you know, I know I'm only one person and one vehicle, but everything counts for something, and, you know, that's really all I wanted to say was something like this would interest me to buy and live in and be able to put my boat there, and it sounded good to me, so I figured I'd come here, sit in and listen, and just tell you my thoughts on it, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, at this point, please come forward. Mention your name and your address
sorry.
before you mention anything.
Peter Veroni, 102 High Street, Revere. Hi. There was a piece of property across the street from the boatyard. I believe it was the Petroselli house. And he asked me, he says, can you get me a broker? And I got him a veteran broker to sell it. The house was beautiful. It was a cape and it was aggressively priced. The problem with it is every buyer that came looked across the street and walked away without even an insulting offer. Not even an offer, not even a bad offer, because nobody in eyeshot of that area wanted to even put an offer on the house. They had a short sale the house for half of what he wanted, and the short sale went through. And I'm just saying that anything in eyeshot of that area is down 20, 30%, and that's a fact. And I just wanted to make that apparent.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, at this point, I'm going to open it up to the subcommittee because we're running out of time here. If any of the subcommittee members have any comments they'd like to make first, Councilor Novoselsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like the attorney to please come up so answer some questions for me that I'm still a little confused about. Number one, the elevations from the lowest point to the highest point now are what?
That's a Rick Salvo question.
Okay, Rick.
Of the land are we talking about?
Yeah, along the water.
About elevation 7 to 8.
At what point?
That's the existing elevations. So
That's-
up at the front of the property.
Yep.
The elevations are about, the lowest elevations are right about on elevation 7.
Okay.
At the rear of the property up along Hayes Avenue, it gets closer to elevation 8.
8. And what about where the boat ramp is?
At the boat ramp, it's down about elevation 6.5.
Okay. Now, there was a proposal to build a seawall, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I met with the developer and the attorney, and we talked about that. Are you still willing to extend that seawall beyond the ballpark and fill in?
Yeah, yes, we are. When we raised that at the Site Plan Review Committee, they thought that was a great idea, subject to approval, of course, by the Revere Conservation Commission, and within whose jurisdiction this lies.
And we're going up to elevation 10, not 12. Okay. Now, if you put the parking where you proposed it, is that going to eliminate that passive area that we were talking about going from Mills Ave to the ball field and the tennis courts?
No, there's still about at a minimum, about a 10-foot wide passive area from the backside of the seawall. So clean it up, landscape it, keep it an open space area, which is the types of things that the Chapter 91 permit will look for anyways.
Okay. The boat slips, we're talking 25 slips, 29 slips.
29, yes.
29 slips. Now, are those going to be assigned to the units, or are those all private leasing?
They're offered first to be assigned to the units.
To the units.
Okay. And by the way, Council, that is not an increase over what's there now.
Right, I understand that. Now, if all the slips aren't taken, does that open it up to the public?
It would.
Now, is offering it to the neighbors one of the first preferences?
Yes, and I think there are 5 or 6, Gary, at least at minimum, neighbors who keep boat slips there now.
Okay. And, so let's see, well, extension, slips, public slips. Now, the taxes you mentioned before, what were right now they're paying what again?
13, about 13.
13, and the proposed, if they went?
Over 200,000.
That's per year?
Yes.
Okay. And if that wasn't built?
13,000. Or, I should probably let you finish your question.
If those weren't built and some of the other alternatives were put in there?
Well, let's say you put a church there.
Okay.
Zero.
Okay.
Zero.
Zero.
If you put a light industrial use, you're not going to be able to tax per residential unit. You would be able to tax on the land in the improved building. And presumably in a light industrial area, the building is going to be industrial, and it's not going to be fitted out as a luxury condominium. So that would depress the valuation, and by extension would depress the tax flow.
Okay. Now, going to traffic for a second. The 338 trips, was that per day or per week?
That is on a typical weekday.
A weekday. So you're talking about 50 trips a day, in and out?
No, that is on any single weekday, so it's about.
On a weekday, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's 170 trips in and 170 trips out. And as we already discussed, 30 occur during each of the peak hours. So the remainder of those trips happen over the course of the day.
Okay. A lot of the complaints that I got, or issues that I got, were regarding water, sewage, drainage, flooding. Now, the seawall that will be built, if I'm correct the way I was reading everything, the water comes in over your client's property directly, and that's actually what fills in the rest of the riverside?
A substantial amount of the water comes
If
in.
it wasn't a January 4th 100-year flood?
Indeed, yes.
Okay. So if we put that seawall there, that would kind of alleviate some of the issues.
That was the thinking at site plan review, that it would ameliorate not only the effect to the subject property, but also to the abutting, adjoining, and properties in the area.
Okay. Now, realizing too, and I think I mentioned this the last time regarding water and sewage, and I'm sure site plan review is going to put a lot of mitigation like we have in a lot of the other buildings, that you're going to have to correct the sewage for the whole area, not just for your building. The water flow would have to be corrected, and the drainage would have to be corrected. So that's something that you folks would have to put into this program as part of mitigation.
I think we have to do it by ordinance anyway.
Yep.
And then site plan review would recommend the areas where it needed to be spent, and I believe it could be conditioned here as well.
Okay. I'm not totally convinced about the additional spaces that you can get that many cars in there, because they look, I don't know if they're really the 9 by 18, if it was really measured that way, but I would have to.
I think Rick had the 9 by 18 ordinance requirement, and I believe that they're all the 9 by 18 spots.
And that would only be used if all the slips were public.
Yes.
In most cases.
Yes.
Because you have enough parking on the lot for the units.
Yes.
So. Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council Novoselsky. Council Penta?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councilor Novoselsky actually asked some of the questions, but I'd actually like to go back to the first speaker. Actually made a lot of sense here. That, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but all this traffic that's going to be coming here because of this building, did you take in consideration the possibilities of what could go there without this council? And the chairman, you said it very elegantly and very easy to comprehend, that this council, when you vote on something as a special permit, it's that time to make the neighborhood and the area improvements, the stipulations that they have to abide by. This still has to go through site plan review, it has to go through the Conservation Commission, has to go through the state. They're going to put conditions on here that can do nothing but better this area. You know, I heard some stories up here, flooding. Poor gentleman's getting water. When the seawater comes over, getting water in his toilet, stuffs the towels in there. This is what I heard at the last meeting. Totally wrong. CDM is coming up here tonight. That's water every one of us taxpayers is paying going to the MWRA. There's a problem with that pipe. This should not be put on this project. That correct problem should be corrected. Same as I heard these people have to come out of their houses at night before a storm and move cars to other areas. That should be problems corrected. When you have numbers in 42 units, people living down there, these are the type of things that probably will get corrected. And maybe that's why the houses are not valued that they should be down there. It's told this is the best area in the city of Revere. If that's the case, how are homes worth $200,000? There's a reason for it. Might be this site and what sits there now. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I mean, something's telling me something's wrong in this area. People getting water through the toilets when seawater comes over? There's infiltration getting in that pipe. Should not be put on this project. And this council has the weight to put what's best for the city. As a whole in is that neighborhood. And we all know what could go there. And trust me, sometimes watch out what you wish for. You know, I remember when I was on the council on 190 North Shore Road. And before it then, there was 10 times more people in this room against that building. I haven't heard one thing. There's probably a lot of people from Revere that moved there, sold their houses, and lived there. Good people, no problems. I wish I had a list of problems I heard back then 20 years ago, because they were 10 times scarier than these problems. But honestly, if you look at the facts, the car issue is probably the least, and that's what people hold in their thing on their fear. The neighborhood, the gentleman said it right. You're going to have someone living in that neighborhood that's going to care about it. Not a transit person coming to a business, doing their business, going home, or whatever they're doing. But that's the type of person you want in the neighborhood, that's someone that's part of the neighborhood. I mean, I see plus after plus after plus after plus. I can't, and you have to weigh the negatives in this. I just don't see them for the neighborhood. I mean, they have some issues down there that should be corrected. And I'm sure the Ward Council will address those questions, those problems that they have, separate than this project. You know, the whole kitchen sink should not be thrown in this project negatives. If you're against it, yes. You know, you're in a debate class, hey, you throw every negative you possibly can. I mean, just like Boston, everybody else is trying to do to Suffolk Downs. I mean, I still have the horses voting. But I mean, you got to take this on as merits. The developer has a track record that everybody goes see. It's not like this is his first thing he's building, marina, same type of building, almost same type of units. I've been over there. I know a couple people live over there. It's phenomenal if you go over there and just take a stroll and look, you know, and what he did with that project. In Winthrop, I know a lot of people from Winthrop, a couple of here, that Winthrop was dead set against that building. And now they'll tell you it's one of the best buildings that was built in Winthrop. So, I mean, I listened to all the negatives that were possibly thrown on this thing. And not that I want to debate them, I just like to get the facts out on every one of those issues. I mean, I could talk for quite a while, but I mean, those issues should not be part of this project. What this project comes down to, is this project the best for that site? That site, something's going to be built there. I mean, let's, you know, he has money invested in it. It's not going to take a loss. Something's going to go there. It's not going to be a passive park unless all the neighborhood wants to pitch in some money. I don't think they can afford to do that. But I think that we, as a council, has a special permit process to put conditions on this, along with site plan review. And trust me, they got a long way to go here. And every step they go, there'll be improvements made to that neighborhood on the developer's dime. So I am one council that will vote in favor of this when it does come up for a vote. And 3 or 4 or 10 years from now, when this thing is built, people are going to say, you know something? Thank God it was built. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Penta. Council President Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot happen in the city. I've seen a lot of projects get turned down, and what could go in places by right were offensive, and the people were angry with what they got, and they fought to keep what might have been a better project out. Now, what I want to hear a little more about, and we seem to be tiptoeing around tonight about what can go there by right. This is light industrial. There can be some offensive, very offensive uses there. And I see some of my friends shaking their head, no, you're wrong. I don't think I interrupted you, my friend, when you were talking, did I? I'd appreciate the same courtesy. Unbelievable. what I'd like to hear from perhaps the attorney or perhaps any of my learned colleagues to tell some of these people what exactly could go there by right.
Well, since the topic of the evening happened to be parking and traffic, I'll tell you that Park and Fly is a parking lot, a parking structure, all can go there as a matter of right. As a matter of fact, if there was so much traffic and it's all coming to the casino, or it's coming to places that are going to be corollary or ancillary to the casino, then a Park and Fly would be a great area, a great business proposal for a light industrial use. And you can do it as a matter of right. It's in the ordinance. You can put a transformer station. You can put a microwave and telecommunications facility. You can put an office building. You can put general retail sales and services, which is of all-encompassing definition. You can put offices, and you can put any industrial use in the industrial area. So what's an industrial use? Well, you can let your mind run to the most optimistic and think it's going to be a real clean dental imaging lab, or it's going to be something that's a foundry. So it's a boatyard now, it's a shipyard, and you can put a shipbuilding facility back in there. And that's as a matter of right. And then there's no limit to what you can do to install by way of a special permit, or to change a non-conforming use, which the marina is a conforming use, but if you were going to take that shipbuilding building and turn it into some other kind of a manufacturing place, I'm curious, and I think not, that you'd need a special permit. I think you can do it as a matter of right. If you're going to enlarge it or expand it, you would need to have a special permit, but still it's a potential use that could go there. That's why industrial areas are designated as such, and they're generally put off away and from the old zoning philosophy that you put things near highways, near waterways, because they're those types of uses that happen on the waterfront. And unless you're developing condominiums like down on Rose Wharf, nothing really good goes on a waterfront. And that's why you see the Boston waterfront being eaten up by residential condos and nice restaurants and things of that nature. We're living 50, 60, 70 years in the dark when you think that you're going to leave an industrial site on a navigable waterway and expect that something nice is going to go there. As a matter of fact, it's just not. And that's why it's industrial. If the City Council, in its wisdom, and the Site Plan Review Committee and the planning staff, which is probably the best in the Commonwealth, bar none, thought that it would be good to change the zoning, you would have done it. But you still have that modicum of control now, because you can control what goes there by special permit. And when I said that a church and some of those other places that trump local zoning, like 40B developments and other type uses that are not necessarily conducive to the neighborhood, can go there and they can walk in, and you've had it happen in this city and you've had it happen around, and take a look at some of the cities surrounding us. When somebody walked in and they were not subject to local zoning, and you wake up the next morning and say, wait a minute, how come I can't control 36 rooms in what used to be a three-family house in Ward 2? Is that right, Counselor? Isn't that happening now? And they're trumping zoning, and that's what you're going to get. I'm not saying that this gentleman's going to do it, but when you say no to everything, then the people who buy the property are going to be the ones who say, we're not going to go up there and get beat up. What we're going to do is we're going to propose something that bypasses and what makes a lot of money. So, you know, can we predict what's going to happen in the future with a future use? No, but I'll tell you one thing, it's not as good as this.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was just trying to get out there that to me, a 40B would be offensive. I know a lot of us up here feel that way. And right now, we're under 10%. That can go there. The other uses, whether or not churches or all these other things that have been talked about, will end up there. I know some of these uses are certainly more offensive to me than that. I just think that everybody should be aware of what could end up there if this project doesn't go there. And if they still decide that they don't want this project, and then they live with whatever they got. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Zimbudo. As the ward councilor is John Powers, I'm going to give him the last word on this matter. Just for anybody who's interested, we have 3 matters on the agenda this evening, the last of which is the Harry Della Russo Stadium special permit. I'm going to put that over a week, and I'm going to defer to the council president as to the second matter on the agenda. He can think about that while Councilor Powers has his say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will be brief. Attorney Cipolletta, you mentioned that the Site Plan Review Committee recommended 42 units, or would I be more accurate in saying that they said no to 47 units and asked you to come back with something that was more palatable for the neighborhood?
The first, I believe, was 63 or 68. The second one, after we took a story and a half off, was 47. They asked us if we could reduce it further.
Did they recommend 42 units?
They don't make recommendations on
Okay,
number
I
of units.
just
They
wanted to make
recommended
that-
that we reduce it down to at least 42.
I just wanted to make that clear, that they made no recommendation for 42
No, they recommended
units.
that we reduce it from 47 down to 42.
Now, now, the seawall that they're proposing,
Yes.
do you have an estimated cost on that?
I think that's an engineering.
Would that be part of the special permit? If, let's say it was $100,000, $200,000, $1 million, whatever it was, would that be part of the special permit that you'd be looking for? As mitigation?
Well, I can answer that in 2 ways. I think the ordinance requires that a certain percentage of the project value be earmarked for.
Water and sewer, that's.
Right, so
yeah.
that would be separate.
Exactly.
Okay, I don't think that would be included in that, because I think the ordinance is specific as to what service needs to be
So
earmarked.
this
I don't
city-
think seawalls are.
This city council could put that on as a condition, right? That a seawall, certain height, width, length be constructed at the.
Well, I think you can put on any reasonable condition. I wouldn't disagree.
Now, let me just make one statement. And back in I think it was 2006, maybe, when
It was.
Mayor Rizzo was chairman of zoning. I prevailed upon him to work, and he did effectively, to change the zoning in the RA district to eliminate the word special permit, only because we thought the city at that time was being severely impacted by overdevelopment. And I still feel that way today, okay? But apparently this was zone light industrial, and it didn't come under, it wasn't in the RA district, okay? My feeling is this. As former Speaker Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. The people in that neighborhood have existed in an RA district, single family, for, I think, since 1939, when those units were built. They do not want overdevelopment down there. I think if the developer had sat down with them and mitigated back and forth and came up with something that they felt would work for the neighborhood, and he felt he could make profit on, at least get his money back, I think they would have worked with him. But that hasn't happened. You remember the day Andy DeSantis called you and there were 25 or 30 truckloads of fill dumped on that site? And Andy DeSantis asked you if you would have it removed, and you said you would. And I take you on your word. And 3 or 4 days later, there was a machine down there spreading it around, okay? That's not being a good neighbor. And I've heard 3 or 4 proponents of this project speak tonight and talk about how unsightly it looked. That's not being a good neighbor either. If you own a piece of property, whether you're building something on it currently or not, it should be cleaned up to make the neighborhood look a little better, to enhance the area. I can tell you now, the way this project is proposed, I will not be voting for it. I am adamantly opposed to it. Have the developer sit down with the neighborhood, as I suggested a year ago, 6 months ago, a year and a half ago, whenever it was. Have the developer sit down with the neighborhood, work something out. We're not, we're building new school after school after school. We're talking about 32-bedroom units here. How many kids is that going to push into the school system? When are we going to say, no, we want it our way, the neighborhood way, and not developers' way? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Powers. We are now well beyond our time, and we're well into the city council time, but with the permission of Council President Zambudo, we're going to delay the city council meeting for what I would expect to be till about 6:30, and take up one other matter. As to this matter, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to hold this in subcommittee because Councilor Patch is still away. I think this issue deserves and requires the full consideration of the City Council, and I expect we'll report this out next week to the full City Council. I would expect a vote will be taken at that point at the will of the Council President. So I thank you for your lively joinder and debate on this matter, and I assure you your city representatives will be taking all of your comments into consideration before making a decision on this matter. I'm going to take a 1-minute recess for those who want to leave, and I'd ask you to do so in an orderly fashion, and hopefully we can get on to the next matter. Thank you. This is the reconvenance of the zoning subcommittee meeting of the Revere City Council of March 24th. We have 2 other matters on the agenda. The third matter we are going to hold in committee. It's the special permit for the Harvey Del Russo Stadium. I've been advised by the Council President that we'll be having a full City Council meeting next week. We will have a 5:30 zoning subcommittee to take that matter up at that time. The second matter on the agenda, zoning subcommittee agenda, which we're taking up right now, is C-14-02, petition from Victoria Vineker, Revere Adult Day Healthcare Center, 765 Revere Beach Parkway, seeking permission from the Revere City Council to modify a non-conforming structure for the purpose of expanding the operation of an existing adult care facility at 765 Revere Beach Parkway in Revere. Councilor Cipolletta.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, honorable members. James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway, Revere, on behalf of the petitioner. As we were before the subcommittee a couple weeks ago, the owner of the facility, Vicki, had just delivered a baby. She was not able to attend. And a certain number of the councilors requested that she personally appear. She's here, and she's the only person in the room I'm taller than. So she's next to me, and whatever questions that the councilors had unresolved from the last subcommittee meeting, Vicki would be able to answer. And I think we pretty much covered all of the ground with regard to the zoning and the ordinance debate, but I think certain of the councilors had specific questions, and she's prepared to answer.
Subcommittee members, Councilor Penta.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I appreciate you holding this over till I got back. I'm basically going to make a quick comment here. I know we're running late, and then I would ask you if I could put a couple conditions on this. I'm actually torn in the middle of this. When this first came in front of us, I couldn't wait to get up here to vote against it. Since that business has been put in there, it's been nothing but a thorn in my side. I've never got so many calls from neighbors, warranted complaints. And, I got the call the night the band was there at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. I went by, seen it with my own eyes. Called the Revere Police. There was a party going on there. You're not living up to the conditions that were put on you before. You're only supposed to be open certain hours from Monday through Friday, not Saturday and Sundays. They're open weekends. I've been by there. People are used in there. I can go on and on and on. Problems with the dumpster. I had problems with the building inspector. I had to go down there. They were picking up at 4 in the morning, which you took care of that problem. But sometimes it's good that these things come in front of us, and they ask to be, expand and to put conditions on. But the problem I have, and I almost want to vote against this. If I wasn't sympathetic to people that are in need of that kind of care, I would vote against it and hope that the business will go away. But I know firsthand, if you don't have a family, a big family, I'm lucky to have one, that if you have no one to care for you, and you know, you're only a caretaker and you can't, it's a good place to drop someone off, and it's a needed service that I would not want to see taken away from people that have it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I just asked that the conditions that site plan review put on stay. Second, I want to put a condition on that no cars, trucks, deliveries, patients, workers go down Mill Street to that site. You either enter from the Parkway and exit from the Parkway. So there's one way in, one way out, not through the neighborhood. Without that condition, if it's not accepted, I will vote against it. Second, if the conditions are not kept, of course, if someone lives on the street and they're using that facility, I mean, common sense would say if you live on one of the streets in the abutting areas, that's different. But if violated, any of the conditions violated by site plan review and the city council, be immediate withdrawal of the license for that facility. No more second chances. This place has got second, third, fourth chances. And like I said, they're looking to expand it. They're looking to take over the whole site. It actually gives them the flexibility of having all those spaces in the front, so I can see this working, that they don't have to, you know, but they have to instruct their vendors. It's their responsibility, not this council, not the city, to instruct them that these are the conditions, that they cannot go to and from that place unless they enter or exit from the Parkway. And that goes for any caretakers. I can understand if someone is not, I mean, I do have a little common sense. If someone is going there for the first time, may not know it. But anybody that is a patient there, worker, that one condition that I will not back off of. Because, I mean, the neighborhood has put up with enough, and they're not going to put up with it anymore. And I'm not going to, you know, I'll take their calls, but I'll tell you, immediately this permit will be stopped. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Pinto. Councilor Guanasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo the comments of my colleague, and I want to go into the wordage of this particular application. The wordage is expanding the operation. In my opinion, it means expanding the aggravation and the wrongdoings that's been occurring there. Just for instance, we've met and spoke on this particular issue 3 times, and it took the 3rd meeting for the owner to be in attendance. All due respect, she had the baby, and but the thing that alarms me most is that she was at home out of state. Now, it's very, very difficult to keep a watchful eye in of an operation out of state. Never mind, you leave your business and you go to the next street is hard enough, but to leave it and go out of state shows and adheres to me that there's absolutely no oversight from the ownership. And you shake your head, but if you had oversight and you concur with the ongoings that have been occurring at this site for the past several years, and you agree with it, then you're running the wrong type of business. I was introduced to your business in a very poor manner, in which they didn't serve English-speaking people, and I was offended by that, and it happened to be my friend. Put that aside. The nature of your business in itself is a very important part of today's society. We need to care for those who need help, and especially our elders. But your particular business is not doing a good thing for our community. Because the first good thing that you have to do as a business in our community is be a good neighbor, to which your business is not a good neighbor. We've had testimony on every single occasion, and testimony from a city councilor stating that they received call from their constituents for help on several occasions. That's not being a good neighbor. And if you're not a good neighbor, then you can't be a good business because you're not doing a service to those you provide for. So that leads me to believe that there is absolutely no oversight management of this particular business. I would be of the nature that if in fact, and I know we will, honor your request, but I think we should modify it and contingent upon 6 months of activity, report back to us in 6 months. We want to hear your testimony. We want to hear from the neighbors. How's it going? Is everything going good? Because you also are funded pretty much by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to which we're all taxpayers. We all have an effort into that process that you get paid from our taxes. So we all have an interest in this, whether you have an adult that you have to care for or whether you're a taxpayer. So again, your business doesn't lead to be a good neighbor. And I know you will offer testimony to the fact that that's not true. So maybe these neighbors that are being disturbed aren't really being disturbed. I know human nature is nobody wants to go out of their way to be a nuisance to anybody. I mean, that's the first call of life. So what I would suggest very strongly, if the ward councilor sees fit, and I would be glad to go with his wishes, to make it contingent upon the process of 6 months review. But what I also want to hear is some sort of a commitment from you that's going to say, this is not going to happen anymore. If in fact it did, we apologize to the neighborhood. It will never happen again. That's what we want to hear, some sort of confidence from you that's going to tell us, make an intelligent decision based on your testimony. So in 6 months from now, we'll be able to recall this and say, you didn't live up or you did do it. That's the big deal. That's the commitment that I'm looking for as a city councilor from you. And I would think that that's very important. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the latitude for speaking.
Thank you, Councilor Ganasso. Any other councilors have any comments? Councilor Zimbardo, Council President Zimbardo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm one of the other councilors who've taken many calls from the area, and I was down there, I visited, we had discussions in the beginning that there were some problems, and the hopes were that they would be worked out, and frankly, they never got worked out. But it appears now we have a set of guidelines in place that might work, and I'm pretty comfortable that with the assurance of your attorney and even the neighbors believe it can work. So I tend to go along with this new proposal. But what my good friend from Ward 3 forgot to mention was that the last time he talked about you accepting some English-speaking clients there. And I want a commitment that there will be some English-speaking clients accepted in your facility. Can you give me that commitment?
I'm sorry. Can I hold it? Too short, I guess. Well, thank you so much for giving me a chance to speak. I want to address the issue about management. I'm not the only partner in this company. I'm the only one who is actually outside of the city of Boston. I live in another state. Yes, you're right. But I do have a local partner, and I believe you met her. Her name is Pearl. And she was not able to come in today. That's why I flew here. And I want to assure you the two of us are trying to do a very good job by being in compliance with all the state and federal regulations. As a matter of fact, we had a couple of state audits, and all the audits were done with zero deficiencies. Now the patients and their families are very happy with their services, and that's why we have very low discharge. Patients are looking into our services, the family are very happy with their services, and we had very little, almost none complaints from the families or current patients. The way the system works about the referrals is we do not choose the patients. We cannot say whether we're accepting you or not. It's not up to us. The state patients who are funded by the state are actually referred to us. And I have a list of referral sources that are using us. One of them is Cambridge Hospital, East Boston Neighborhood Health Center, Mass General, which is in Chelsea and Revere, Suffolk Mental Health, and Winsome Health Center. all of these case managers are referring patients to us. Another big source of our referrals is Chelsea Winthrop ASAP. So it is not up to us to say, if you're an English-speaking person, we're not going to accept you. As a matter of fact, we do have several current patients that are only English-speaking. And for that reason, we have even a couple of employees that are not bilingual, they only speak English. So let me assure you that we do not discriminate. We don't say if you don't speak, I don't know, Russian or just Spanish, you're only going to be able to get in. And all of our marketing material is done in several languages. And I'm pretty sure I showed them to you last time you visited. Regarding being good neighbors, we do want to be very good neighbors. And I never met a couple of our neighbors, so I'm willing to stay here today and meet with them and hear their concerns, because we do want to be good neighbors. And our goal only is to succeed and stay in this location, so we are willing to work. We will educate our vendors. We've done so much since we've talked about, I believe it was 3 years ago, we had letters sent to them, we had emails sent to their management about how the truck delivery should be done. So we thought it was taken care of, so we will definitely do it again, and we'll reassure that it's happening again. Regarding trash container, I believe at the beginning there was a lot of trash. So what we did, we actually increased the size of the container, plus we also increased the days of pickup. Unfortunately, on some mornings we come in and we see trash, and it's not our trash. Some neighbors just dump trash. So we have cameras, we install cameras, and we could see that some truck pulls up and they just dump black bags. And because we have the lock already, they can't put them up, inside the container, so they just leave them outside. That's out of our league, but we do pick them up next day and we put them back in the trash. So we are trying to be good neighbors and work with neighbors. I don't know if I addressed all the
Okay,
issues.
well, thank you very much for that. We really need to move this along because we have a council meeting that we have to start here. You kind of danced around or didn't quite answer my, you told me about all the resources you have that send you patients. Can we ask them to send us some English-speaking patients? We had an issue that was brought up and well-documented with the Ward 3 counselor of someone who wanted to go in, and because he didn't speak Spanish, he was not admitted. Am I correct in that? Okay, so that's an issue that was on the table. It was pretty well documented, and that's what all we're trying to get to. And Council Penta has put forward that he accepts the conditions. We're all on board that we think you can abide by them, but we're not going to take it lightly if they're not abided by. But I think the other one is that we would like to see some people able to get in if they only speak English.
We currently do have a couple of only English-speaking patients. Yes, we've had them for at least 2 years already. So, and they are Riviera members, residents, I should say, sorry.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Zambudo. It is getting late, and I'm hoping, Ms. Vancouver, that you got the gist of this. We had a very lively debate here the last time we went. Sorry you couldn't have been here, and congratulations with the birth of your child. Nonetheless, this is a serious matter. We are not disposed to hear of any more complaints about a business that has set parameters, told us they would follow the parameters, then have late-night parties. That's not going to work. We are not going to continue to live with a business that cannot keep its promises that have been made to us. As to the issue of English-speaking, of non-English-speaking, I think we addressed that at the last meeting either. Revere is an extremely welcoming community. We are extremely tolerant. We not only are intolerant, but we encourage diversity in this community, but diversity is a two-way street. It means we accept the diversity of others, that they must accept the diversity that they have between us. I think you heard loud and clear from the city council. I am not going to countenance a vote one way or the other on this matter tonight. I will report it out this evening to the city council. As to the restriction, a 6-month restriction, if Councilor Ganassi would like to make that motion, he certainly may to the full city council. I'm more inclined to say if you cannot follow the rules, we will revoke this permit at any time, at any place, anyhow. And that means 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years. Councilor Penta has proposed a very appropriate measure that Revere Beach Parkway, which is a well-traveled roadway in the city, is not really involved in the neighborhood, be the only egress and access to the extent possible, certainly for your employees and vendors, but certainly also to the extent possible for your patients. And I'm prepared to vote in favor of that myself, assuming he will make that motion to the full city council. In addition to that, you have 3 other conditions. Site plan review is recommended. I'll just review them briefly. The parking lot must be striped to provide 22 parking spaces. Should be no parking of vans or employees' vehicles along Mill Street or Taft Street. The plans must be stamped and approved by the fire department prior to the issuance of a building permit. And a designated no parking fire lane must be maintained along the front of the building for accessibility at all times by the fire department and the ambulance. And again, with Councilor Penta's condition, I will again be reporting the activity in this at this hearing to the full city council in a few minutes. I expect there'll be a vote. You may decide to stay if you like, and we'll see what the city council has to say about that. With that, I'm going to conclude, and with all apologies to Councilor President Zambuto and the listening audience, I'm going to conclude this zoning subcommittee meeting. The city council meeting will, I assume, start in about 2 minutes. Is that correct, Council President? Thank you. Thank you very much.